This week's question of the week is especially interesting if you've ever had a weird utility bill that you didn't know what to do with. Now, this person is in a weird situation because they've never paid an electric bill and they've been living at this place for years. Here's the question. I built a house and moved in 3 years ago this coming December. We called to have the electricity moved over to our name a week after moving in. This electricity account was in our builder's name before we moved in. I was given this account number by the electric company and was told someone would have to come look at our meter and to expect a bill in a few months. Should be the month right after. Now let's fast forward 6 months and there's still no bill. I called the electricity company again to inform them, and they said that there was an issue with their account and that they would fix it and expect a bill to come through. It's your first red flag right there. To expect a bill, maybe, kick it down the can or down the road a little bit. Fast forward nearly a year and still no bill, and now their power's gone out unexpectedly. Well, I guess you could have expected. You haven't paid a bill in a year. I called the electric company and I was told that the power was cut off because there was a new meter installed. And I informed them that I had a newly constructed home and already have a meter installed. I also told them that I haven't received an electric bill for 2 years at that point. I eventually get on the phone with a supervisor who gets my power cut back on and tells me to expect a bill in the next few months. Nearly 3 years go by and there's still no electric bill. I've never seen anyone come out to look at the meter. I've spoken to the electric company 3 times now trying to solve the issue, I guess once a year. Sounds like not enough to me. I'd be a little bit more red flags flying up in here. I've even spoke to our home builder and they don't see any issue on their end. That answers one of my quick questions right out of the gate. What should I do at this point? So this is a weird situation and I've never heard about it going this far. Now, usually when I talk to people, they're getting a weird bill because they actually got their account switched over. Maybe like this is what happened to us. We moved in the middle of the month into a new build similar to this, and we actually had responsibility starting on the 1st, even though we only moved in on the 15th and took ownership of the building. So for the first couple weeks, we noticed that our bill was really big. It was only supposed to be 2 weeks, and frankly, at least in our experience, the lights were left on a lot more than what we typically would use, or the fact that they had just planted sod, and while they were putting in the irrigation, they just let the water run constantly for a couple weeks. So the water bill, the electricity bill, these things were very high. And so we had to call a couple of the utilities, just water and electric, and said, hey, it started on the 1st, our responsibility for the billing, but we moved in on the 15th, so the builder is going to go and we had to work it out with them, and the builder actually ended up sending us a check, and that, it took some follow-up. Sometimes instead of once a year, it takes, at least once every other week minimum. I mean, now if I were in this situation, and I would be escalating it to, you start out and you didn't get a bill the first month, but you talked to them, they said it would come in the next couple months, is fine. So maybe 3 months later, I'd call again. And if they didn't answer it, then maybe a month later, I'd call again. And then 2 weeks later, and then a week. And then by that point, I'd be calling every day, trying to figure out what the situation is with. Because if I'm not receiving the bill for the electricity that I'm using day in and day out, and it's still running, then someone's paying that bill. And I owe that money. And it's not just gonna magically go away. I can't run away from this. If it's on the builder's books, they're gonna find out eventually. And what I don't want is a bill for 3 years worth of electricity. Maybe interest and penalties that come along with that. Or if the electric company got it tied to someone else, that's the right thing to do to figure out and justify your own usage of your own utilities. And so, what should this person do at this point? Here's my first recommendation. You need to be documenting every time that you've contacted them. We're talking about names, times. You need to get things in writing. It doesn't matter what the result is of all this, because it's still a mystery. And I'd love for this person to reach out and tell me like what happened, like figure out what was going on. But it's best practices to get as much documentation as possible. Another example is when we had a similar situation but this is with AT&T, our internet provider. And it's like one of those things where you sign up and you get promised one cost, and typically what happens is it's an introductory promotion, and 12 months later then your cost will go up and you can go and negotiate it back down and whatever. This is a situation where it's supposed to be $50 a month, here's the amount of internet you get, and then it turns out a month later everything's wrong. The bandwidth is wrong, the setup was wrong, the cable package is wrong, the cost is wrong, the fees are off. And so you had to go in and I just had to start this communication cycle with AT&T where it's like, hey, I've got to correct these things. But the problem is that there were so many things wrong with this situation for us with this AT&T. I got nothing against AT&T, we still use them. And so it's not a huge issue, but when you start stacking up issues, you find that you may knock off one problem and then two more come up. It's like a hydra. And so with this, I had this binder, and I would call AT&T like clockwork every Tuesday on my lunch. And so I'm having lunch, I call them up, and I had, I'd probably spend about 45 minutes on the phone every week, and I did that for months. And it got to a point where after you call a certain number of times and you've communicated, you fix one problem, you get things sent to you in writing. So what I would do is I call up, I document who it is, I take notes. I would often use the chat function and have transcripts of the chat sent to me. And I would keep that all documented in like a digital and a hard copy because I'm 1,000 years old. And so I had like a literal 3-ring binder full of transcripts of communication and of confirmation via email of what I discussed with different reps, whether it be tech reps and sales reps and all that stuff. And the net result of all that is that, yes, we ended up with a decent customer service experience eventually. But it's funny, the first number you call, there's like a system involved. You discuss it, and this is stuff that you can look up. You can go on Reddit and figure out what's the best way to get through customer service for X company. And so once you get through the motions a couple times, then I was sent a phone number that was direct to someone's desk that was going to be able to help me out with anything. This was, and it's been years, so this number doesn't work anymore. But at the time, if I ever need anything done with our AT&T account, one phone call, 2 rings, someone would pick up and they would have access and be able to help me with anything. And it was a beautiful thing. And so maybe that's something where maybe you're not talking to the right person. You talk to one person over at this utility company, then you talk to the supervisor, they kind of gave you a nothing answer. Let's be honest, they said that you can expect a bill in a couple months, or oh, it was just a meter was installed, but that wasn't the case. You knew it was a brand new house and the meter never got swapped out, and it was just an answer to get you off the phone so they could go back to whatever they were doing that day and not have to worry about your problem, to worry about their own problems. Sometimes it just takes making your problem their problem, and that's unfortunate. You don't want to be a jerk about it. And so every time I would call AT&T or anyone else in customer service when I needed something, I would pick up the phone and I would dial and smile and dial, and I would call them up and say, hey, I got this problem. I don't know if necessarily you're the right person to talk to. I'm just trying to feel this out. I'm new to this. Take that posture of a learner. Hey, could you help me understand this? Can you help teach me about what this means? And if you take that posture where you show up with with your shoulders down, not up, and with a deep breath and an attitude of, hey, if you can help teach me about this, then I'm going to be able to just be a better customer for you. And if they know that you're coming at them with that kind of attitude, rather than, you did this wrong and y'all are evil and you got to get this right and you owe me big time kind of stuff, man, they don't owe you anything. And when you're able to, attract more flies with honey than vinegar, is kind of like the Southern saying. I mean, the last time that I was on with customer service, whatever, they sent me a $100 gift card just for vibing well with them. And so, so a lot of times your posture and your attitude is going to directly affect the way that they respond to you and what you're able to get out of it. Because let's be real, you're coming at it in this situation, you want to get caught up on what you owe. And I'm gonna be honest, you owe some money to someone out there. You haven't been paying your electric bill. There's a possibility that, it's coming from a separate escrow account, or maybe this is something that you're paying for and you just didn't even realize. So this could be a situation. So many times I sit down with coaching clients, I look at their budget with them, go through the different line items, and you start realizing that they're paying for things they didn't even realize. They got subscriptions, they've got fees, and they just didn't even realize that they were coming through and eating away what we call as inefficiencies. We call those inefficiencies in people's budgets, and if you can solve 1% of your inefficiencies in your income, think of it this way. You make $50,000 a year and you have a 1% inefficiency. Well, each year, if you invested that money, it could become $1 million in 30 years. And that sounds crazy, but 1% inefficiency in your income going to like fees or something that you don't even use, invested properly in the right kind of funds, 10% annual return on average over 30 years, turns into $1 million. And so that's what's at stake here. And so, this is a situation, if you find yourself, think about where your inefficiencies are in your budget, in your spending, in your income, then it's time to sit down with a coach and really crack open that and find those inefficiencies and get the ROI for really taking a hard look and really, tackling your money journey in an effective way. So you can find our information at dfbradley.com if you want to schedule a call, or if you want to work out some time to look at some of our resources and figure out ways that you can help win with money. And otherwise, feel free to follow us on social media and check out this video here where I answer the question about someone whether or not they should cancel their wedding or if they should go into debt. And so that was an interesting question. Check it out right here, and I'll see you next time.